It's 10 o'clock and I'm calling the Administrative Committee meeting order. For those of you who may not know, I'm Clark Parker. I'm going to be taking the chair of the meeting this morning because Dr. Burke is absent. The first, do any of my board members, colleagues have any comments they would like to make before we get started with the agenda?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to add to the agenda approval of the contract for my board assistant. We couldn't add it until I'd initialed it, but I have initialed it this morning and I would like to have it added if that would be all right.
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have to have a roll call order? Otherwise, can the chair move that to be added on its own?
I think the chair can move that. I think you're good.
Okay.
We're getting nods of yes, so you're good.
No motion required.
So
No, sorry, looking at the wrong one. Motion required, please.
Oh, motion required.
Motion required.
To add an agenda item?
Oh, no, but to approve the.
Yeah,
To approve
just
this.
add.
Yeah, but not to,
No, not to add the item because it's already on the agenda. Sorry.
is that,
Okay.
so we don't need a motion to add it to the other group that's gonna be approved today,
Okay,
but we'll just need to approve them
To
all as a
approve them.
approve
group.
them all at the same time.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
it's added to the agenda by order of the chair.
Yep, you're good.
Any travel, Mr. Nastri? That
No travel to
None?
report, Mr. Chair.
no out-of-country travel?
No, sir.
Okay. The review of the July 6th governing board agenda. Any one day has any comments on that, board members?
No comment.
Are there any public comments relative to that agenda item, since we have a lot of people in the audience?
No comment here.
None, then we will move on to the next item of the approval of the compensation for board member assistants, consultants. Can I have a motion on that particular item?
I would move approval of the board member assistants consultant contracts, including my own board member assistant.
Okay? Can I have a second?
Second.
Alrighty, clerk call the roll, please.
Mayor Benoit,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Yes.
Dr. Parker,
Aye.
motion passes 3-0.
Alrighty. Sujata, are we ready to go with the pre-audit conference presenter?
Yes, Dr. Parker, good morning. Good morning, members of the committee. This is a pre-conference for the financial audit and the single audit for the fiscal year that's going to end soon on June 30th. And we have our auditors here from BCA Watson Rice and Helen Shu, she's the partner. And she's going to be talking about what they're going to cover and the timeline. So I'm going to turn it over to Helen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Helen Chu, and I am the audit engagement partner with BCA Watson Rice. And to my right is Rusty Cavalin. He is the audit manager on this engagement. We will be conducting the financial and the single audit for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2018 for the South Coast Air Quality Management District. At the end of our audit, we will be providing an opinion on the financial statements and also an opinion on compliance with the major federal programs for the South Coast Air Quality Management District. Now, during our audit, we also we will be assessing or reviewing internal controls, and as part of our internal controls review to identify any material weaknesses or any deficiencies, we will issue a separate report on internal controls. Okay. Our audit schedule, we plan on being out here starting on June 19th for 2 weeks, where we would do our planning and also internal control review. And then we will return on August 14th for the financial and single audit, substantive and compliance testing. We should be done with field work the week of October 1st, and we will be back here the first week in November to present to you the draft audit report. Okay. Now, there's there's a new GASB that will have a financial impact for the June 30, 2018 fiscal year. And GASB is 75 and is related to accounting and financial reporting for the post-employment benefits. And basically what that entails is the GASB 75 requires a liability of the other post-employment benefits to be booked in the financial statements. In the past, it was only disclosed in the notes, but from now on, starting June 30, 2018, it needs to be booked in the financial statements. So that you will see that in your financial statements.
I'm sorry, what's GASB?
GASB is Government Accounting Standards Board. And in addition to that, there are certain additional note disclosures that's required related to that GASB, and that will be included in the new report. I'd like to ask the administrative committee here if there's any particular concerns in any areas or any legal matters or any significant, legal matters or any knowledge of fraud or that you are aware of at this time.
I'll just mention.
I have, go right ahead, Mr. Mitchell.
I just want to mention that probably the agency and our public constituents are always concerned about the unfunded liability on pensions. So that would be something of interest to us, and whether there's a way to address that we're not addressing it.
And along those same lines, I've seen a couple tools now on our city side, the city's brought forward to us so that we can actually see what our unfunded liabilities are now and if we make any changes to any of our contracts. There was a web-based tool that was demonstrated to us for our cities where we can actually check a box and say, yeah, we want to give an extra week of vacation to our employees, or if we want to adjust our pay scale, and then it just automatically populates and then changes that on a website where you can see all those changes live. I think that's a tool that we could really use here. I don't know if that's a part of this, but something I'll be bringing up later on. But especially if we're making decisions in the future on employment contracts, it's nice to have that kind of a tool available to us, even in the boardroom while we're making that adjustment. So, but I'm not sure if that's purview to this, but it's something I'd be curious to see.
Okay. My question was going to be similar to that of Mitchell's. Are we putting the unfunded liabilities in a footnote? Or are we putting that in a liability that would be deferred current? How's that going to be displayed?
The pension liability is included in the financial statements.
And for over in the notes.
Yes.
In addition to the notes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions.
Not here.
There's no action required on it, right? It's just information.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Questions?
Well,
Sujata, you up again for the next item?
Yes,
And
sir.
which is a matter that is close to all of our hearts of the pitch.
Yes, Dr. Parker, I understand this is a complicated matter, and I have a short presentation. So this is a discussion item that was requested by the board members when we did our budget presentation, and we're going to be discussing today what are AQMD's pension liabilities, what's causing the pension liabilities to increase, what some other government entities are doing, and what can AQMD do to offset some of this liability. So we have three types of pension liabilities. Currently, we have pension obligation bonds in the amount of $36 million that we still have to pay. We also have other post-employment benefits for $3.5 million. The one that Helen just mentioned, it's going to show up on our financials this year. and net pension liability, which is the one that causes the most concern, for $200 million. So pension obligation bonds, we have two series, and the first series was issued in 1995, and for $35 million, and we still owe $12 million on that. We budget approximately $3 million in our budget every year for that. The second series was issued in 2004, and it was issued for $47 million, and we have a budget of $4 million that we pay on those bonds every year. And the proceeds of these bonds were given to SB Sarah in an effort to control our pension liability and our contribution rate. So there is an advisory put out by Government Finance Officers Association about pension obligation bonds, and they say that these bonds are complex instruments, and the main reason why these pension obligation bonds were issued is because they were at a lower interest rate, and it was assumed that the pension plans would be earning a little higher investment rate of return. And we've seen that that didn't happen. And also, the bond rating agencies don't look at this very favorably sometimes, because they feel that maybe the government agency is issuing them because they're trying to control some liability or some immediate need, and the liabilities are going to get pushed off in the future. So we're going to show that in the next slide, that the contribution amount, since we issued our second series of bonds, it stayed around 10-11 million, but in the 15 years it's become triple. It's going this year, in fiscal year 18-19, we're going to be paying almost over $30 million. So it somehow didn't work out for AQMD, but because we still have that liability, and our pension liability continued to increase. The other post-employment benefits, that is a much smaller liability. It's about $3.4 million. This is something for our legacy employees that were with LA County that came over to to AQMD, and they continued to stay with the LASERA system. Our San Bernardino County pension plan does not offer other post-employment benefits, so our current employees are not going to get that. And the liability is $3.4 million. We budget $240,000 every year. And, it's a closed plan. We have 50 retirees, and, the cost is not that much. And we expect this liability to go down in the future. So this net pension liability is the one that, is of some concern. And it's $200 million as of our last valuation, which was done on June 30, 2017. And as I mentioned, the cost that we are going to be contributing to SB Sarah in the next fiscal year is $34 million. And of that, 70% is to pay the long-term liability, which is called UAAL, unfunded actuarially accrued liability. And the rest is for the normal cost, which is the benefits that the current employees are earning. So the two factors that really drive this pension liability is if the investments don't perform to the level that they are supposed to, and also the discount rate that SB Sarah assumes, which is, they've moved it down from 7.5 to 7.25. Every time a pension plan moves their investment rate of return down, it's going to cause the agency to contribute more. And, we're going to talk about CalPERS doing that, and that's causing some concern to cities that their contribution rates are going to go up. And the way the assets work is that SB Sarah gets 60% of the assets from investments, 30% from the employers, and 10% from the employees. So anytime those investments don't work out, then the employer has to contribute more. And here is the history of SB Sarah's performance, and this is typical of probably many other pension plans, but there were some deep losses in fiscal years 08-09, which we're still recovering from. And if you smooth out those losses, we probably are not getting, SB Sarah is still not earning the 7.5 or 7.25 investment rate of return. But if you look at the funded ratio, and here's a comparison of the funded ratio with various other pension plans, SB Sarah's funded ratio is higher than some of these. And especially if you compare it to CalPERS, CalPERS is at 68% and SB Sarah is over, it went down a little bit in the 17 evaluation, but it's around 80%. So it's higher than CalPERS. And that's causing a lot of concern because cities are now, and I'm going to talk about it in the next slide, where the municipalities and cities that are in CalPERS are concerned that CalPERS will also reduce the investment rate of return, which will cause more contributions in the future. And so what are other entities doing? I've already mentioned, like the various municipalities, they're probably putting some money away in trusts, etc. I also talked to some of the other air districts, such as Bay Area and San Joaquin. They have a pension liability of 100 million to 75 million, and they are also putting some, maybe $1 million or 750,000 away. Bay Area also has other post-employment benefits, so they are a little bit more concerned about that also. And you know, we've all lowered our benefits because of the 2013 Act, PEPRA Act, where the contribution or the pensionable amount is capped at 150,000, and it changes from year to year, but it's a lower benefit. So that might help in the long run. Some agencies might be thinking of going towards defined contribution plans, or reducing workforce, or not giving salary increases, or recovering these through fee increases. Not very good options, especially in a strong labor market. You know, you can't really not give salary increases, etc. So what can AQMD do? And these are just options and perhaps some recommendations that staff is making. We can push for pension reform at the state level. We can also, since we are still paying the pension obligation bonds, when those are paid off, the first series will get paid off in fiscal year 21-22. So maybe that's a good time after that to start setting aside $3 million. The first series, because we budget $3 million for it right now. So in fiscal year 22-23, we can set aside some money. And when the second series is paid off, we can increase that amount if the board, you know, chooses to do that. And also continue to pay 100% of SBCR's contribution. This is very important because otherwise our pension liability will increase further. And also we suggest that continue offering benefits to employees, but not maybe add more pensionable items. And some caution about not issuing pension obligation bonds.
Sujata, could you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
On
the other pensionable, not adding new pensionable items?
Not adding
Example.
new pensionable items such as, you know, other agencies might have
One-time bonus or.
those, yeah, something like that. Some maybe, I don't know, health or something that might cause it to become pensionable.
We don't offer that. We don't offer post-employment health benefits.
No, we don't offer post-employment health benefits.
But we have done the one-time bonus.
Yeah, but that one is not pensionable.
Right. I'm just saying there are things that we can do non-pensionable, like you're recommending,
Right.
that do help the employees.
Yes, we can do anything that's non-pensionable, but not add more pensionable because it's only going to increase the cost. And then in conclusion, we're saying that as our workforce will become, it will turn and become more and more employees will become PEPRA, and because the pensionable amount is lower, perhaps our liability will level off or go down. And, you know, we can, and SB Sarah is doing better than other pension systems. And also we're suggesting that maybe after our pension obligation bonds are paid, we can put some money aside to offset some of that liability and build an asset. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So I have a question. So we have almost 100 million in bonds, right?
Pension obligation
Okay, we have
bonds?
a $200 million pension obligation.
Yes.
my understanding that 100 million of that is in bonds to pay off? No, that's separate.
Yeah, that's separate.
So we actually have
36.
obligations that are more like 300 million.
Our pension
Bond
obligation bonds are only 36 million is left to pay on that.
Oh, 36 and 47, but
When we issued them, they were issued
Oh,
long
but they're
time ago, so
paid
we've
down
been
to
servicing
36
them.
million,
So we
okay.
only have 36 million left on that.
so
Only
the,
36.
so you have 200 million.
Compared to 200 million.
$200 million obligation. So has there been, and you said put money away, but has there been any consideration of simply paying down that liability? At a certain rate, every year you pay it down, because what we're doing is we're paying interest on that obligation, right? Are we paying about 7% interest
On
on
the
the
pension,
200 million that we owe?
that's also factored into the 200 million liability by SB Sarah.
Okay,
Everything is already factored in, and then they're telling us this is your net pension liability.
okay, so let me just say, in my city, we do have obligations, but we're paying that down, because right now we're paying interest on it. So when we did these calculations earlier this week, we figured we could save, we don't have an obligation like 200 million, so we have an obligation of like 4 million, but we can save about 2 million by paying that down at a certain chunk every year for the next several years. So that's within our plan. And that could be done here. You could pay it down so you're not paying the interest rate, right? I mean, because the interest rate really eats up all your money. So I don't know if you've done that calculation. Our auditors have done that calculation for us and shown us if we do this is what would happen. If you do another plan, that would be what would happen.
Right. And that's why pension obligation bonds were issued in the first place, because the concept is that they have a lower interest rate and the investments are going to do better. The plan's investments are going to earn 7 or 8%. So it's just when the plan doesn't earn that rate of return that, it becomes a concern.
Right.
And
And that's what happened here.
yes, that's what happened.
The pension discount rate was not what we expected it to be in connection with in comparison to the bond interest rate.
Right.
But is
So,
there any merit
Yeah.
to speeding up the payout of the pension bonds? think that's
No,
what
the
it
pension
is.
bonds, the two series, I looked at them. The 1995 series clearly says you cannot prepay before maturity. And the second one, the calculation, it's a few, maybe 6 years are left on that, and the calculation is such that if you pay it even, you'll pretty much be paying the whole amount.
so you can't prepay the bond.
Let me-
You owe
let me-
another couple $100 million on
Right.
top of that bond that you could prepay. Am I correct in saying that? So we could work a payment, prepay that. and
The
get it-
bond, the 36
No, not
million.
Not the bonds, the
The
bonds on the
200.
table.
Yes, you can. We can start giving SB Sarah more money.
Right.
Yes.
You can
To-
certainly
to
do
save
that.
long term and not pay
You-
that extra 7% on top.
You can
of it.
certainly do that, and that would be one of the options that you could do, say when our bonds are paid off, because the bonds, we're paying like 7 million already in our budget. We have that cost, and we barely balance the budget. So after that's paid off and we start budgeting, say maybe $3 million extra to SB Sarah, we can certainly do that.
That's what I think we should ask our auditors or whoever does this stuff for us to do
SB
an
Sarah?
analysis of that.
We can ask.
And then take a look at our budget to see where we have excess money that we might be able to put aside for paying that down.
And part of that web app that the League of Cities showed us, not only can it predict, okay, if you add pensionable benefits, this is what your liability would be, but also they had in there where you could say, okay, what if you did start paying an extra
Yes.
100,000 a year? What does that mean for us in 2040?
Yes.
And it'd be I think a well-used tool around here if we don't already have
But-
it.
But I want to ask a couple of questions relative to the historical. You're saying that we issued bonds without a call option in them? And we're paying 7.7% because these are tax exempt bonds, is that correct?
I believe so, Dr. Burke. One of them clearly says that you cannot pay. Dr. Parker? Oh, sorry, Dr. Parker. Sorry. Yes, one of them clearly says that it cannot be paid prior to maturity.
one of them, but not both.
Not both, but
Because what I'm saying is that today, tax exempt bonds on the market itself is going for 4%
yes,
to 4.5%. And if we're paying 7.5%, that's double the amount of interest, and especially if you have a call option, to refinance them would only cost us maybe 0.75%. We'd end up saving 3.5 or 4%. So has anyone looked at that to determine exactly what these bonds are that we have? And there's certainly, because I've never heard, excuse my expression, I was in the insurance business, as you probably may know, for almost 20 years. I've never heard of a bond going without a call option in them that is 30-year or 25-year bonds. I don't care whether or not they are tax exempt or not, non-tax exempt, but especially tax exempt bonds. They generally, within 10 years, usually have some kind of a call option, and they use that to exert the market to get lower interest rates. So now, SB Sarah is not going to be the one who's going to tell us that, because they don't really care. They have their own issue itself is trying to get more yields rather than basically lowering costs. And from what I understand, that we bought these bonds in order to be able to hedge against the inflationary increase itself of our tax liability. Is that correct?
yes, Dr. Parker, the bonds were issued at, the 2004 series bonds were issued at a 5%, 5.5%, and at that time, SB Sarah's investment rate of return was projected to be 8%. So yes, they were.
Well, one of the slides that you showed that the actual first bonds were between 5% and 7.7%.
Yeah, that was the 1995 bonds.
But it's still outstanding, though, is that correct?
Yeah, it's got another 3 or 4 years left on that.
Oh, so it will be over with at that point in time.
Yes.
So that means that was basically, what, a 20-year bond?
Yes. 20, 25 years.
Okay. I mean, I'm not, I'm just, when I sit and I listen to the conversation, you guys have the ones who have the responsibility. I used to buy the bonds. I was the one who financed them and gave people money and stuff for these tax exempt bonds. And to find out, I wish I could personally buy some 7.7% tax exempt bonds today. I'd buy them at even at a discount of 6%.
Dr. Parker, I don't think they are tax exempt. We went over that at the city, and they're not the same as a municipal bond. A pension obligation bond's treated a little differently.
Also, they're not tax
I
exempt.
don't think they are, yeah.
I can look it up.
You can check that, but I don't believe they're tax exempt.
Well, why in the city would you have a bond that is not tax exempt?
It's not a municipal bond, it's a pension obligation bond, so it's very different from a municipal bond. It's different.
Maybe that's one of the things that we should be looking at the legislature to allow us to issue tax exempt bonds for this particular purpose to lower the cost, because this is very troubling to have to see that we are still obligated and increasing $200 million.
So our city also considered that. Should we issue a municipal bond for capital infrastructure in the city? Then we'd have to mortgage our city hall. We decided we didn't want to mortgage our city hall to pay off our pension obligations. And so we went through that kind of exercise. So, but through that exercise, I think that is one way you could, I don't know, we could do that, and because we're not a municipality, but anyway, we kind of went through those steps and decided, that we would simply pay it down out of excess monies in our general fund over the next few years to reduce the interest rate that we're paying.
I think that's what's.
But and I recognize this is not the forum to discuss this in, but we carry on a municipality function, and that is about cleaning air. We don't do things for profit here, so I'm really kind of bemused as to why any bonds that we would issue for that particular purpose, including that of paying our general basic overhead, would not be subject to that. Again, the lawyers are more apt to say that, but I think that there can be an argument that should be made
Well, let's
that would
look
be
into it.
made to say.
Let's do some more research on it with our experts, our auditors and our attorneys. I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, any further questions? Anybody there who want to speak to this issue in public comment?
We want to offer money to pay off
Anybody got a few million that they would like to basically invest in? All righty, thank you very much, Sujata.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 8, the status report on major ongoing and upcoming projects for information management.
Good morning.
Ron?
Good morning, Dr. Parker, members of the committee. My name is Ora McEwen, and I'm the Technology Implementation Manager in Information Management. I'm here on behalf of Ron Moskowitz, who's on vacation. And speaking on the status report for major projects, all the projects are doing very well. We actually completed the fiber cable upgrade. We have gone live with the GIS Open Data Portal. We have gone live with the Air Quality Index upgrade and conversion. All of the other projects are in good order and proceeding on schedule. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Any questions from any of my colleagues?
I have none.
Nope.
Hearing none? Okay, thank you very much. Going to move now to items 9 through 11, which will all be our action items. Transfer and appropriate funds and execute contracts for short and long-term systems development, maintenance, and support services. Again, that is to be presented by Ron, and I would assume that you're setting in for Ron on that particular issue as well.
Good morning, good morning again. And this next item is a request to execute a contract with a software development firm that has been previously approved by the board and to provide funding for development of a mobile phone application. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I'm looking to our,
Any
to
questions?
our computer expert guy. I don't have any
Is this
questions.
a new
but-
app for us, or?
This is actually, there's an application out there now that
Right.
was built in 2005.
Yeah.
Old technology,
Very
and we
familiar
are
with how
replacing
clunky
that
it is.
application with 2 applications, one for the Apple phone and
Right.
one for the Android.
One thing I'd like to see in there, and I think I brought this up a couple times, is the ability with our new GIS systems to pull that app up, look across the freeway when I see smoke or a plume or whatever it is, and somehow figure out what that building is that is having whatever's going on.
There
So-
will be GIS capabilities.
Awesome. Can't wait to see it.
Okay, I will move the staff recommendation on this.
Second.
Okay, will the clerk call the roll, please?
Mayor Benoit,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Aye.
Dr. Parker,
Aye.
motion passes 3-0.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to item number 10, Jason Lowe of Recognize Revenue and Transfer and Appropriate Funds Monitoring Programs and issues solicitations, purchase orders for air monitoring and laboratory equipment, plus one vehicle.
Good morning, Dr. Parker and members of the
Jason?
Yes. Good morning, Dr. Parker, members of the committee. This is an annual item. AQMD expects to receive grant awards for 2 air monitoring programs. This action is to recognize revenue from those awards once they are received, and also to recognize and appropriate remaining funds from other EPA monitoring programs, as well as the community air toxics programs. And the last portion of the action is to purchase air monitoring and laboratory equipment and a vehicle. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are these going to be very
Clean air.
low expensive kind of monitors that we're going to be purchasing? Or these are going to be the more elaborate stationary ones?
So these are going to be more of the reference level equipment, not the low cost sensors.
Okay.
I'll move the.
Any questions?
No, I don't have any.
Okay.
Nope.
I'll move the item.
Second.
All righty, will the clerk call the roll, please?
Mayor Benoit?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Aye.
Dr. Parker?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
All right. Sarah? Is to authorize the executive officer to go to the CARP AB 197 grant agreement, recognize revenue and appropriate funds to support the SCAQMD's annual emission reporting software.
Good morning, Dr. Parker. My name is Ian McMillan. This is an item for the annual emissions reporting program, and that's my group, so I'll cover this item just very briefly. So every year, we collect emissions information. We report that to CARB under AB 197 from 2015. CARB now publishes all that information on their website. They have a very handy tool called the pollution mapping tool. If people haven't looked at it, it's actually really very slick. It's a nice interface. But as part of that data collection effort, there's a lot of sort of back-end technical work that has to happen. What CARB is doing is they're now providing grants to all the air districts to help collect that information to pass it through to CARB. So this is an item to authorize the executive officer to enter into that grant, and this will be $50,000 in the first year and $25,000 in perpetuity. And so we'll be using these funds in this first year in particular to help maintain our AER software that is used to collect all the emissions information. And with that, if there's any questions, I can take them.
No question.
Okay, any questions from the colleagues? Hearing none, then I will entertain a motion.
I'll move the item.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved in second. Will we have any comments from any members of the audience? None? Call the roll.
Mayor Benoit?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Aye.
Dr. Parker?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you very much. We have written reports. There's no motion required on them. Anyone there has any questions concerning the written reports about the Environmental Justice Advisory Group draft minutes?
No.
Hearing none, those will be ordered, received, and any other matters itself that is pending before the committee? Any public comments from anyone there that about a matter that is not necessarily, that was not on the agenda?
Not seeing anyone jumping up.
Okay, well, then I will say that this meeting will be, our next meeting will be July 13th, 2018 at 10 a.m. And we now call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for coming, everyone, and have a nice weekend.